The videos so far in this series have shown that Christianity has been integral in the advancement of science throughout history. But what about now? Has current science proven Christianity to simply be superstition and fairy tales? No, science has done nothing of the sort. Modern science does not disprove Christianity. In fact, science in 2023 is actually providing strong evidence for the truth of Christianity. 70 years ago, in 1953, Watson and Crick had just discovered the structure of DNA. Almost every scientist still thought the universe to be static and eternal, contrary to what the Bible had taught for thousands of years. We'd only discovered at most 5 characteristics of the universe that have been fine-tuned for life. The Opera Haldane idea of life originating from a warm little pond was alive and well with the recently completed Miller-Urey experiment. The scientific community was confident that we would very soon find a naturalistic pathway to the first life. Well, what has happened since 1953? Has 70 more years of studying DNA made it more or less probable that DNA could appear through a naturalistic process? Has 70 years of cosmological data confirmed or refuted an eternal universe? Has origin of life research since the 1950s made a naturalistic origin of life more or less probable? Has current science shown us that Christianity is just a silly superstition? Well, to answer these questions, I will focus on 3 basic Christian beliefs that come straight out of the Bible that can also be addressed by science. Number 1, the Bible teaches that the universe was created by God and that space and time had an absolute beginning. What does current cosmology say about that? Number 2, the Bible teaches that God upholds the universe and that the universe was designed for us to flourish on earth. What does current physics say about that? And number 3, the Bible teaches that God created life on planet Earth. What does current biology, specifically current origin of life research, say? So, the universe was created by God. Does current cosmology agree? The discovery of the cosmic microwave background radiation in 1964 provided the last piece of evidence to convince the scientific community that the universe had a beginning. The data since has continued to point to a creation event. The beginning of the universe is actually supported by 2 of the most tested and confirmed scientific theories, special relativity and general relativity. The current standard model for the universe includes an absolute beginning to time, space, and matter, which of course supports the tenet that the universe was created. In the 4th century, with only the Bible as his source, Augustine wrote, "God made the heaven and earth in the beginning, not in the beginning of time, but in Christ, since he was the Word with the Father, through which and in which all things were made." God, after all, also made times, and that is why there were no times before he made any. And if time began to be together with heaven and earth, no time can be found in which God had not yet made heaven and earth. Augustine argued that time itself is part of the created order, and that the universe was created out of nothing, 2 ideas that modern science didn't agree with for over 1,500 years. The claim that the Bible teaches current cosmology does not come from our present knowledge of science being read back into the biblical texts. Both Jewish and Christian scholars, using only the biblical text, both describe current cosmology long before the first evidence of our current theory. In the 2nd century, Irenaeus defended creation out of nothing. You just saw that Augustine in the 4th century affirmed the doctrine of creation out of nothing and states that there was a beginning of time and of matter. The following passage was written by a Jewish scholar in the 12th century. Notice the mention of the expanding universe. At the briefest instant following creation, all the matter of the universe was concentrated in a very small place, no larger than a grain of mustard. The matter at this time was very thin, so intangible that it did not have a real substance. It did have, however, a potential to gain substance and form, and to become tangible matter. From the initial concentration of this intangible substance in its minute location, the substance expanded, expanding the universe as it did so. As the expansion progressed, a change in the substance occurred. Its initially thin, non-corporeal substance took on the tangible aspects of matter as we know it. From this initial act of creation, from this ethereal, thin pseudosubstance. Everything that has existed or will ever exist was, is, and will be formed. Christian doctrine for the last 2,000 years has held that the universe had a beginning. For the vast majority of the time, the prevailing scientific view was that the universe was past and future eternal. Today, the scientific evidence for an absolute beginning to time, space, and matter still continues to mount. Since God created the universe and also inspired the biblical writings, we should not be surprised with this astounding agreement between the Christian scriptures and nature. Alexander Vilenkin, director of the Institute of Cosmology at Tufts University, said in 2012 that all the evidence we have says that the universe had a beginning. This, of course, agrees very well with the first verse in Genesis. The universe was designed for us. Does current physics agree? The design of the universe is actually becoming so accepted that the question is no longer if the universe is fine-tuned for life, but instead has become who or what is responsible for the fine-tuning. Paul Davies, physics professor at Arizona State University, wrote an entire book in 2006 addressing the question, why is the universe just right for life? He starts chapter 8 with this quote, "Scientists have long been aware that the universe seems strangely suited to life, but they mostly chose to ignore it. It was an embarrassment. It looked too much like the work of a cosmic designer." Hugh Ross of Reasons to Believe has been keeping track of the number of characteristics of the universe, galaxy, solar system, and Earth that must be fine-tuned for us to exist. His number has climbed from around 5 in the 1960s to well over 1,000 today in every area of scientific study. Simon Conway Morris, professor of evolutionary paleobiology at Cambridge University, argues in his 2003 book, Life's Solutions, that the universe is strangely fit to the purpose of life. Morris quotes physicist Howard Van Til. "It is not simply the numerical values of certain parameters that must be just right in order for life to develop. No, it's the entire formational economy of the universe that must be just right." The more we study nature, the more we continue to find increasing evidence that we are part of the purpose of the universe. This design supports what is taught in the Bible. So the Bible teaches that God created life. Does current biology, specifically origin of life research, agree? Well, origin of life research since 1953 has made the creation of life on Earth more reasonable and a materialistic explanation of life less reasonable. Since 1953, we have determined that there was no prebiotic chemical soup, no warm little pond. Stephen Benner, origin of life researcher, quote, "The building blocks of the building block molecules of life are either missing on the early Earth or they existed at abundance levels far too dilute to be of any use." As we do more research, organic synthesis under the conditions of the early Earth of the large molecules needed for life has become more and more difficult. Also, chemists having to intervene to do these synthesis reactions in the lab actually provides evidence for an intelligent mind needing to be involved in the creation of life. The organic synthesis reactions required for life to begin all require a researcher to control some aspect of the experiment to get the needed result. Simon Conway Morris has pointed out, quote, "Many of the experiments designed to explain one or another step in the origin of life are either of tenuous relevance to any believable prebiotic setting or involved an experimental rig in which the hand of the researcher becomes, for all intents and purposes, the hand of God." While materialism predicts that these reactions should occur on their own, what we find instead is that an intelligence is necessary every time we attempt to duplicate origin of life chemistry. The more origin of life research we do, the more evidence we find for a creator. Since the discovery of DNA in 1953, we continue to uncover how amazing the chemical code for life actually is. DNA is information. We have discovered that the DNA code is exactly like a language, or exactly like a super advanced computer code. The more we investigate, the more complex and specially designed the DNA molecule shows itself to be. We are also discovering other sources of information necessary for life outside of DNA. Now, we only know of one source of information in the entire universe, and that's a mind. The evidence we have found since the 1950s increasingly supports that life was a product of a mind. So, instead of science proving that Christianity is false, virtually every discovery and major advance in science over the last 70 years has supported Christianity and has made the existence of God more reasonable. The Bible teaches that the universe was created by God. This is supported by current cosmology. The Bible teaches that the universe was designed for us. This is supported by the fine-tuning we see in every area of science. And the Bible teaches that God created life. This is supported by the origin of life research and the discovery that DNA is information. The more we look at nature, the more we do science, the more we find support for Christianity.